So now to the breaking news we told you about. There's brand new reporting in the Washington Post on the mounting frustration from DOJ with lawyers for Team Trump in the documents investigation. From that brand new reporting, quote, prosecutors have urged a federal judge to hold Donald Trump's office in contempt of court for failing to fully comply with a May subpoena to return all classified documents in his possession. That's according to people familiar with the matter. It's a sign of how contentious the private talks have become over whether the former president still holds any secret papers. Joining our coverage, Barbara McQuade, former U.S. attorney, now a law professor at the University of Michigan, as well as an MSNBC contributor. And Pete Strzok is here, former FBI counterintelligence agent. Barb, first take us through what this means to hold Trump's office in contempt of court. What would that mean?
Well, it would likely mean daily fines until they agree to comply with these conditions. You know, ordinarily, when you're working with any sort of corporate entity, there is a custodian of records. That is a real person who says, I'm the one who's responsible for gathering these documents. I'm the one who's responsible for saying what we do and do not have. And in the case of Trump's retention of these documents, they've played it very cute. It's different people who come and go. And they won't say things like, you have all of them. They say, well, I've looked pretty hard and I didn't find any. And I think this just demonstrates the government's frustration with that position. You know, do you have more or not? And if you refuse to tell us, then we want the court to hold you in contempt and fine you every day until you do.
Pete Strzok, this is sort of how this came to pass today. The Washington Post writes this. In recent days, Justice Department lawyers have asked U.S. District Court Judge Beryl Howell to hold Trump's office in contempt. That's according to people who spoke anonymously to describe sealed court proceedings. But the judge has not yet held a hearing or ruled on the request, they said. What is DOJ seeking? They're actually seeking not the fine to be paid, but for the documents to be turned over, right?
Right, absolutely. DOJ, at the end of the day, along with the FBI, wants to be certain that all of these documents, that if they were released, could damage national security, which is why they're classified, that they've got those all back under control. And, you know, this comes to a head on the news earlier this week that 2 documents came out of the storage locker, where things like wrestling belts and swords and God knows what else is there. So, you know, if you are the government, if you are worried about the national security of the United States of America, you don't want these highly classified pieces of information that could put people in danger, that could put sources and methods in danger. You don't want those out there. So what DOJ is trying to do is simply get an answer once and for all from some person to say, yes, you have all of them. And it's frustrating, and I can't begin to imagine how long this has taken to finally percolate to the stage where now DOJ is asking for this.
So, Barbara McQuade, if I wanted something and I had to wait, I would feel frustrated. But if I'm DOJ and what you're trying to protect is state secrets, I don't understand why they got frustrated. Why not charge the obstruction case, which has all happened in full view of the public? You basically have confessions in public view as well. Why not charge the obstruction of this investigation into classified state secrets today?
Well, it may come, and I think there are often things in investigations that we don't know. You have to prove that a person acted corruptly in obstructing an investigation. One of the things that I think will be challenging about this case is the multiple people who have been involved here. Can you tie all of this to Trump? Or because there's Christina Bobb and there are other lawyers who got involved, did everybody have a little piece of it and nobody had one piece of it? You have to anticipate any potential defenses that a person will put forward. And so those are the kinds of things that I think can cause delay. But you're absolutely right that there's certainly probable cause here, that there is evidence of obstruction of justice. And I think the question just becomes, at what point does the Justice Department feel that it has enough evidence that it can prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a higher standard? I
mean, Pete, you have Mueller Volume 2 obstruction exhibits style volumes of obstruction here. And the incidents are eerily similar, right? Tell a lawyer to say something that isn't true so that you can do something that isn't legal. It's what he does. Why not charge the obstruction case?
Well, I think the why is exactly what was laid out in Volume 2. What Michael Cohen and others have said is that it is very difficult when it comes down to the elements of the crime to pin, in particular, Trump down on knowing or saying something. He's not the kind of person that writes in an email or in a document, look, I want you to meet with the Department of Justice and lie to them. And before you do that, take all these boxes out of there. He may not say anything specifically. He may just, in the way that he communicates in many ways that feels like a mob boss, make known what he wants done in a way that if you are a prosecutor, if you're an investigator, investigating this, it's very, very hard to line up that behavior against elements of a crime that's going to convince a jury that he did it. So it's enormously frustrating. It absolutely is not new. It is absolutely consistent with the things we've seen going back to the Mueller report and all of the events that they looked at. And I just, I hope we get to some point in this process where we are able to find, and DOJ is able to kind of go over the threshold of bringing charges.
Barbara, what do you believe the status of our country's state secrets is? I mean, if 2 more classified documents were found in his storage facility this week, if there's a contempt of court charge looming for, I mean, what do you think the state of the actual classified material is?
It's very concerning, Nicole. Now, it may be that they have not left the boxes that Donald Trump put them in, but when you think about the storage, it is absolutely below the standards that the Justice Department, that the U.S. government requires. For some of these documents, top secret, those must be kept not only in a safe, but in a SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. And that's because the content of those documents would, if released, cause exceptionally grave harm to the national security of the United States. So we don't know whether any of these documents have been exposed to interlopers and others who would use it to do harm against the United States, but only by dumb luck because of the way that Donald Trump has so recklessly handled these.